client services for Risch results. And we specialize in identifying and helping companies find exceptional talent to help them grow their businesses. We specialize in trying to recruit diverse pools of talent to present to clients so that they can, basically try to hire the best talent for their company and for their culture. So today I'm going to talk to you about finding and recruiting talent in this really, crazy market that we've got going on right now. And it's a crazy market because it has flipped for so many years. It's, most of the time it's all about the companies. Well, right now it's all about the candidates and what they want. And so we've been seeing some really not so traditional things going on in this marketplace. So I just kind of wanted to, since there's a small group of us right now, I'll just kind of open it up and ask a question to see if there's anything in particular, any questions that you have. And then they'll give people a few more minutes to join, and then I can switch over to a presentation if we decide to do that. So since this is informal, I'm going to be informal and we're just going to kind of go with it. So what are some challenges that you all are seeing or facing, or are there any questions that you want to know about the current, talent pool or hiring market?
So we are not seeing enough resume activity coming to us organically. We're having to go out and actually try to mine the market for people. So any tips you have on how to conduct those candidate searches would be helpful for me. Thanks.
I do have some tips for that. And that is not unusual right now in this market, that you are not getting an overabundance of resumes or people coming to you. Right now, it's really interesting. People are not responding to job posts the way they have in the past. I mean, typically a job post would go up and then a company would be inundated with 100 to 200 or more resumes. We are not finding, companies are not finding that, and we are not finding that right now, which is really interesting. And the other thing about that is, so there's two types of candidates in the market right now. There's what we call active, which are those that are actively looking because they are out of work, or they have actively decided that they want to make a jump to something else. And then we have what we call passive. So passive candidates are those candidates who are actively working, have been working at a company for a long time, and but when reached out to by a recruiter or by someone from your company, are open to considering opportunities. So I would say probably, at least in the last 6 months, probably, if I had to guess, 75% of the candidates that our clients have hired have been passive candidates that were actively working at other companies. And they decided to explore the opportunity, and then it was a match, and they took the new position. Many people who are working today would like to make a change, for various reasons, whether it's flexibility, whether it's, they just would like a new challenge or something like that, but they're not actively looking. They're just kind of passively there. So that's why you're not really getting that overabundance of candidates that you would typically get. And it has largely to do with the fact that the market is flipped and candidates can kind of drive it versus companies driving it like before. And then I'll give some tips. I'm going to hold off on that for just a second, and then I'll come back. Any other questions?
Well, I'll have to just chime in. At Gordon Highlander, we have lots of candidates. We are hiring weekly. Like, I don't know everybody that HR sends out, hey, we've just hired 4 more people, and a lot of those people too that I don't know, I think they're coming out from our website, and then just word of mouth. And then a lot of people are just referrals, right? We're looking for certain people. I'm out in my networks, trying to find recruiters to bring talent in. But it just seems like, I think a lot of that is just We had a guy the other day from another company. He calls me and he says, I just see everything that y'all are posting on LinkedIn. I see your videos that your CEO's putting out and your company culture. And man, I just want to be a part of that. And so I think a lot of that too is, Penny, too, just getting your name out there, getting that culture. Why do we want to work for that company? Because there's so many out there, right? You really have to be going after people, really putting that out there for people to see, because you're right, Andrea. People are choosy, they're looking, they're being specific about where they want, and culture is a huge part of that. And so if you're not sharing that culture, your benefits, out there, then, it is going to be tough to recruit people.
Great, great insights. I'm so glad the things that you all are saying, both Penny and Pam, those are all things that are a part of my presentation. So I am going to bring that up. And so we will talk about some of those things. And Pam, to your point, you guys are doing the right things. And because a lot of what you talked about, I'm going to touch on. So you all are doing the right things in terms of, what you said about making candidates feel like they want to work there, that they want to be a part of what you're doing, the excitement, all of that. I mean, it's kind of you want them to have that fear of missing out, like, oh my gosh, what's going over there? Why I'm missing out on something. Everybody seems, they're doing all this great work. Everybody seems to love what they're doing, that kind of thing. And it comes across as part of your culture, but it can also come across in your storytelling and how you talk about your company, and not really just talk about what your company does, but actually your why, the meaning behind the work that your company does. So any other questions about our challenges that you guys are facing? I love that you have hit on so many things.
I have a comment and a question. One, well, we're working on our budget for next year, and Pam and Andrea, you just validated that marketing and, updating our website and all of that probably needs to be in there, because you forget that sort of thing recruits talent. It's, maybe an indirect way of recruiting people. And so you validated that I need to work that in the budget next year. And then two, do you think COVID, how companies are handling COVID, or the work from home, how is that, impacting candidates and people looking for work or staying, that flexibility, all of that's come from COVID? What are your thoughts on that as far as candidates? And
it is affecting candidates greatly, but it affects candidates differently depending on the industry, right? So there are some industries where it's just, it's expected, kind of like when we first went into COVID, if you were an essential company or essential. So for some industries, it's just expected that you're going to have to be on site at the job, right? Other industries where it doesn't require, I guess now, especially after over a year and a half of being kind of in this different environment and people being remote, they've discovered, I don't have to be in that building all the time to do my job. And so for those candidates, it's a totally different ball game. They want to be remote, or they want some type of flexibility. So some companies are having to rethink, how they work and their flexibility as it relates to their employees. So it's very different. So like in much of construction, you're going to have to be on site. Your employees are not all positions, but the majority of the positions, you're going to have to be on site. So I think one of the things that you think about is what else can you offer as it relates to flexibility. And you know what, I'm actually going to go ahead, if I can. I have no earthly idea why all of these things keep popping up. They normally don't pop up in the mornings.
While Andrea's doing that, she brought up a really good point. Kelly brought up a really good point. My son is a millennial, and so he's working at an opportunity. I think he gets to work 3 days in the office or 2 days at home or something like that. But one of the things that they talk about is, if it ever went back to full time, they would go somewhere else because the money is not the main driver. They really like the flexibility.
It's interesting because I also, as I've been interviewing candidates, that question is coming up more for me. Do you offer work from home? And I, in the past, I never really got that question. So at least for our office positions.
Yeah, I recently went through a seminar, a convention, and this, of course, this topic always comes up, and it was very interesting, some of the stats of what's trending around the globe, right? So the hybrid thing, but then it was surprising that there's a lot of people saying, yeah, we want a hybrid. We always want to keep a hybrid. But the fact that you can recruit talent globally and allow them to work remotely is incredible. I have people, one of my friend's daughters, she's working from home, but the company is in New Jersey, so it's just interesting that how this is all affected and how you find talent remotely. So it's just really interesting how this is all evolved.
So the things that you just touched on are all so true. And actually, I'm going to go back to what Penny first talked about in terms of, how do you find those candidates? How do you get people to come to you when they're not doing that like they have in the past? And one of the biggest thing is that right now today have to have a proactive approach to hiring. Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So you now have to have a proactive approach to hiring. And part of that proactive approach means finding talent through your own sourcing. And the way you find talent through your own sourcing is by looking for people in your social network. So that would be like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn in particular. So for us as recruiters, we use LinkedIn a lot. And LinkedIn also has a special tool called LinkedIn Recruiter. And so we have that because that gives us access to everyone on LinkedIn. One of the things that's different about Risch Results as a recruitment firm that I have really come to appreciate is the fact that Jolene truly believes in going beyond just your network, like going beyond just your little small pool. Or for us, we do have a database that has some resumes, because it has resumes of candidates that we've interviewed that we thought were really great that the client didn't pick because they could only pick one person. But we don't just rely on that database. Every time we have a client that comes to us for a position, we start off by we look in that database, but we start off by going beyond just our network. So for us, every search is a unique search. And so we have researchers, a research team that goes out, scours like LinkedIn, other places, reaching out to candidates and looking at them to see if they check the boxes of all the things that the company is looking for in a particular candidate for a position. And so for you can kind of do this, some of the same thing. You can look in you can use your networks to look and see who is in your network, but who's connected to you, that might be connected to other candidates that really fit who you're looking for. Another thing that you do for sourcing is something that you do every day, which is relationship building and networking. Even in, believe it or not, even in that little speed networking round that we did, you can use your networking to actually find candidates. And you do that by looking at it kind of like, those icebreakers where like at trade shows, they give you the card and you go around and you have to get something checked off on every square. If you're looking for candidates, think of it kind of in that way. Think of it as every conversation is an opportunity for you to learn about someone and their skills. And just keep that in mind, someone and their skills. Experience is important. For some positions, experience is everything. But in today's market, especially when the candidate pool is so competitive and so tight, one of the things that you're going to have to start looking at differently is skills versus experience. So let's talk about an industry. So like in an industry like yours, you may have a position and there may be someone that doesn't necessarily have the experience in your industry, but do they have the transferable skills? Think of it that way. So if, for example, like food and beverage people, so skills that most food and beverage, if they are really good food and beverage people, they have customer service skills. And that is a transferable skill that can go from one industry to another. Think about people in education. Many of them have leadership skills, speaking skills, things like that. So that's what I mean about like when you're talking to the person, just kind of pay attention, listen, and you just never know who may pop up on your radar that might be a phenomenal candidate that is coming from totally somewhere else. Jolene loves to use me as an example of that. I don't have a background in the recruitment industry. I have more than 30 years of experience in marketing and communications. That's my jam, right? But Jolene got to meet me when she went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. I was on the staff. I was the director of alumni engagement and also marketing. And I put together like continuing education, networking events, just all these different things, and tried to love on the alumni. And those were skills that Jolene looked at and said, hey, my business can grow, but in order to grow my business, I need a senior person who can come in and help me grow my business, because I'm only one person and I'm trying to be CEO. I'm trying to do all of the marketing. She was doing all the business development, and she's like, I need someone else who has those types of skills. I don't care that she doesn't have industry experience. And so Jolene actually does what our company does. And she actually recruited me away from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business team. So it's really important to think about, like skills and experience and how those things can play out. Do you guys have any questions or any comments about what I just talked about?
I just would like to say I love that, and I forget, sometimes that avenue, and so I'm glad that you touched on that and reminded me. And I'm going to an event this afternoon, and the wheels were turning in my head of how can I insert some skills conversations in there and continue to kind of always be looking for candidates for our business.
And then that's great. So the next slide, where we talk about what are professionals looking for, what do they want? These things kind of touch on some of what you guys like, especially your question, Kelly, like the very first thing when you talked about COVID and how has it affected it. Flexibility. Right now, in pretty much any study or any poll that is being done right now, what people are finding that workers are wanting is flexibility. It used to be that compensation was the number one driver. Don't get me wrong, compensation is still important, but it is no longer the number one driver. The number one driver now is flexibility. And so one study said that a recent study said that over 50% of candidates are looking for flexibility. My little box is over it, so I can't see. Another said 88%. Employees want to have a say in where and when they work. And so that's what I meant by, depending on the industry, companies are having to rethink their working model, their staffing model, their working model, and to be able to come up with different flexibility ways. So for companies that do work that doesn't really require people to always be in the building, some of them are having to revisit whether they're going to stay remote, whether they're going to come up with a hybrid where they work in office so many days and then they allow some remote work. And that can be anything from like 50% in office, 50% at home, or what some smaller companies are doing who want to keep that kind of that unity that they have, that family feel that they have of working together. What they're doing is they may do like 4 days in the office and then 1 day remote. And sometimes that 1 day remote is like a Friday, so it's a little bit more of a treat that you didn't have to travel in and all that kind of stuff. Another thing that companies are doing around flexibility is for ever since COVID, and especially those people with children, childcare has been quite the issue. So what some companies are offering up is flexibility around when people work. So some companies are allowing people to actually come in later so that they can take care of getting their kids off to school or wherever they need to be, come in, work like 3/4 of the day, then leave early to go and pick them up. And then those employees are choosing to log on after they've picked up their children, fed them, spend some time, then they log back on in the evenings and finish up whatever work that needs to be done. So flexibility, just keep that in mind. Flexibility can look different ways, just depending on what's needed. I know one company, another small business that I know of, her company has decided to actually start to work like, I think it's an extra hour every day or whatever, so that they can actually have off Fridays or a Friday every 2 weeks or something like that. So, and that really got her employees jazzed. They were willing to work that extra time every day so that they could actually have, time off. So I would say when it comes to flexibility, just think about what flexibility means to you and what you can do to actually provide some flexibility to your employees. Now, again, in the construction industry, that might not always be an option. I mean, like for you all, like what would flexibility look like in your industry if it's even an option? Any thoughts?
Well, I think, for a construction company, the office staff could certainly be flexible. However, you'd have to think about how that would look or how that would play out with the people in the field, the actual construction workers. So I had the opportunity to work for a small construction company, and they were flexible with the office staff, and then also the project teams in the field. They were flexible, but then it's, again, you've got to think about the actual people doing the construction work. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I would say, oh, sorry, Pam, was that you? Our field, and we have situations where I can see that some of the younger generation isn't always volunteering for overtime and, wants a little more flexibility. They're not maybe willing to put in as many hours. And I will say it's challenging from an HR and a cultural standpoint because you have that gap in generations, and the older generations, they have a different mentality of you need to be there in person every day. And so you can offer the same flexibility to everyone, and this goes for the office, primarily, but different generations choose not to take it. And then you have to make sure that there's not resentment building of, well, I feel like they should be here in person. You have this different opinions with different generations. So that's tough to manage even if you offer that flexibility, the same to everyone, if not everybody takes it, they have different perspectives. It's hard to just manage the culture with that as well.
Mm-hmm. It is difficult. It is very difficult. And, one of the things that you can do is to try and, try to bridge that gap, particularly with the millennials, by having some of the more senior employees, and I don't mean like necessarily in title, I mean like an age perspective, that kind of thing, talk about, have them to be able to really express and tell their story about, why they work there, the meaning that they get from their job, that kind of thing. Because believe it or not, millennials, they really do, they tap into that. Meaning is a big thing for them, like their work meaning, being meaningful, impact, that kind of thing. So that kind of goes back to your company culture and making your company bringing out its why and its meaning, more than it just seeming like a job where you're punching in and punching out, right? And part of that too goes to like celebrating your work and celebrating the employees. Another thing we're seeing is all of our recruiters, overall benefits is becoming important too. Like, again, compensation is a driver, but compensation, that's a very sticky wheel right now too, depending on industries and levels of workers. But one of the things that recruiters are seeing, and candidates, they're having conversations with candidates about and with clients, is about the overall benefits. So the compensation, the flexibility, the culture comes into play. Sometimes, and one of you guys mentioned it, like if a person turns out to be a really good candidate, are you willing to relocate them? Like if they're somewhere else and they need to be here, will you consider relocating them? And if you relocate them, would you give them some type of benefit package to relocate them? Or there can be, as companies, you guys can put requirements around that, so that, because it is expensive to hire someone and to bring them on just to have them leave, right? So you can put some stipulations around that, like you will offer this, and maybe even if it's a bonus, or maybe even if it's a relocation, you do maybe half, and then after X number of months they get another bonus or half, or whatever. Because for some industries, what we're finding is like, for example, we were just on a call the other day with someone from Coca-Cola, and she's like a regional person, and she's responsible for hiring like the drivers and the people who go and fulfill the stuff at all the different locations. And so, flexibility is not, some of them are like wanting flexibility, and she's like, well, I can't let you work remote. I mean, this is you gotta drive, you gotta go to these places, whatever. She actually is not having a problem right now hiring people. She actually has been hitting it hard through networking, through LinkedIn, through everything. She's been able to hire people. She was telling us she had just hired 200 people. The challenge she's having is she's getting those people hired, and then they work there a few weeks, and then they leave because a competitor ups their pay by $1 or $2. And so that creates like a vicious cycle, because the person's going to move for a couple of dollars, and then you've got to start the whole process over again. But yet, the company has to look at, okay, okay, so they just up $2. I mean, can I afford to give a $5 increase across the board? Because again, going back to equity, you're not just looking at that one person, you're looking at all your people across and how that affects everything. So it's very tricky, but you just have to kind of keep different things in mind. I know one thing with hourly workers right now, that if you have workers that are hourly, that you could consider offering, is if they join your company, like after, I don't know, 60 days or 90 days, maybe you offer them, $100 bonus or something like that. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be little things, but just those little things will at least show that as a company, you are being open and that you're trying to be responsive to the market, versus just coming off as a flat, no, I'm not doing anything, right? So that's another thing. The other thing is development opportunities. So 88% of employees confirm that they're interested in companies prioritizing learning for them. And that learning is different across industries. So for some, it may be just having a boss who takes an interest in them, or being able to get them a mentor. For others, it may mean they want to try to get a certain, maybe they are looking or desiring to get a certain certification in something in your industry, and that would help them to like get to the next level job of what they want to do within your industry, or things like that. So try to be mindful of the people who work for you and what they're looking for, because this applies to both existing as well as new people coming into your companies. And then, of course, right now with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is really a big deal, particularly with millennials. They are looking and want to work at places that are more diverse. And diverse means everything from age to race to just, different things. So anything, any questions from what I've just talked about? Or any comments? And then the meaningful work, I think we've kind of touched on that, but that's come back too. I mean, people are really always really excited about meaningful work. And so, just being able to give stories or, connect your why. If you are the owner, be able to connect your why you do what you do, why it's important, particularly like if it's family business that has been passed down and has kept going. If you have employees that have been with you for a long time, like, why have they stayed? What's meaningful for them about what you do? Just helping to share that really will over time go a long way in helping to build up your culture and helping your employees to all be on the same page about why they're doing what they're doing. And also on the flip side of that, like the more you do that, it will also help kind of pinpoint. I mean, sometimes you have employees, but they're not the right employees, or they're not in the right seat. And so it helps you to identify that as well. And in doing so, once you identify that, then you also know, hey, I need to go out. I don't have the right person. Let me go out and start looking for the other person, so that when I have to deal with this situation, because at some point, if it's not the right person, if they're not the right fit for your company, either they're going to elect to leave, or you're going to be forced to let them go, because in the end, it's going to be costing you money. Any other questions about that?
I have one comment or lesson learned that I had. So we found a candidate and recruited them from the Austin area and got them on board, and they were looking for a place to live and relocate. And we had given, some incentive for relocating as far as costs and all of that. But we ended up losing this person after about 60 days because he could not find a place to live because of the real estate market. And so a lesson learned for me was I should have connected him with somebody in the real estate industry, right? Or an agent to help him actually find a place to live. And, just those sort of resources. Unfortunately, it was too late at that point, but I thought that was really interesting because it never crossed my mind. He didn't ask for help, and I didn't think to offer help. I knew he was searching for a house, but something so simple like that, cost me a candidate.
That's very interesting. And I'm glad you brought up that point. The point that, number one, he didn't ask for help. And it would have been great if you had known, because then you could have offered up resources. And sometimes employees, because they are new, they won't ask for help. because maybe they don't want to make it seem like, oh, I'm not up to the challenge, I can't make this work, or I'm too new to be asking this kind of stuff, I don't want to come across as needy, any of that. So it is really good to be able to check in with your employees just to see how they're doing, particularly if you do have one of those situations where you relocate someone, because if I remember, I think we may have even had a client like that, or something like that happened. I think we were interviewing a candidate for a client, and they had just relocated, I think because of her husband. And then she was going through the process with us, but somewhere along in there, because of the whole housing situation, that he decided to go back to wherever they were with his old company instead of the move, because the housing was a problem. So that, I'm glad you brought that up. That is very interesting story and insight.
That might have been the wife of the guy that I. That would be a small world, right?
It is a small world. So you're not, I mean, you're right. It could have been that same person. Who knows? And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about recruitment marketing to attract candidates, which we kind of touched on earlier. I think now, since we already kind of touched on it, I mean, I was going to ask you guys the question about how many of you even really consider branding and marketing as key components to your recruitment and hiring efforts. And if you haven't really thought about it before, you really should now, because it really, really is key. Again, it's interesting. People are, while they're not actively responding to job posts or whatever, people are really paying attention to companies and what they're doing and who they are and their brands, particularly millennials. Millennials, you know, they really look at this closely, because they look and want to go work for companies that they feel they can relate to and understand them, or fit with, you know, who they are, their why. And so it's really important to make sure that you use, as a person with a marketing background, I always say I love an integrated marketing plan, an integrated strategy. And basically that is where all of your marketing efforts don't work separately in a silo, but they are integrated and all working together. And how they integrate and all work together is by making sure that the messaging, the storytelling that you're putting out there about your company, like all of that is working together with your brand. Your brand is more than just your logo and your company name. It's really what your company stands for and your work and the meaning behind that work. And just like you are marketing to your clients, to your customers, you can also use that same marketing just by tweaking it a little bit to actually appeal to candidates. Like, you know, this is our company and this is why we do what we do, or whatever. And these are our employees, and blah, blah is an excellent employee who's been here like 18 years. And every day he wakes up excited and comes to work because blah. So if you have some success stories or some stories of people, really get those out there. Get those out there on your websites, on social media, in places where they matter. Which kind of leads me into another thing about positive online reviews. You guys, a lot of people, you know, we always look for positive online reviews from customers and clients, but you want those same things from your employees, right? Because one bad person who leaves and writes a bad review, like on Glassdoor or something like that, it can totally wreck you. And that was just one person, and that was one person's opinion. So what we like to do is we like to encourage clients to actually be very, very proactive about that. So if you have employees that have been at your company for a long time, or even if they've just been there a short time, but they really, really are excited and love what they do, encourage them to actually do a review, so that you have reviews out there that are positive, that offset everything else. Or again, encourage them by getting them to share their story so that you can have those positive attributes or those stories or little video things on your website. Another thing as far as attracting candidates is employee referral. The best employees are those who are referred by other people, because the people who work for you or the people who know you really well, even your clients who know you really well, don't forget to ask them when you're looking for people to find, if they know of any good people, say, hey, I have this position. Do you know of anyone? Because they know your company, they know your work. And if they know someone, they're going to know people who would, be a better fit for your company or who would represent your company well. So always remember employee referrals. And then your community outreach that you do. Whenever you're in the community, all the good things that you do in the community, again, make that marketing, both your brand, your company brand marketing, tweak it so that also makes it appealing for if you are during a time when you are looking for new workers. So any questions or comments here? Uh-oh, I don't know what I just did. So the last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is during recruitment right now, there are some key things that are important in terms of your recruitment process. So when you are hiring or bringing on new people, it's really important to have a recruitment process. And with that recruitment process, one of the first things you want to think about is what is going to be the candidate's experience. So the candidate experience is really key, because just like they want to make a good impression on you, you want to make a good impression on them, particularly in a candidate market. You want to make a good impression on them so that they think about you and they're like, oh, they really thought about me, or they really put some thought into this process. And the candidate experience, I mean, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be simple. It can be really, really simple, but it's all about making that positive impression. So it can be as simple as little things like when you're bringing a candidate in for an interview or you're doing a virtual interview, making sure that they have all the details, just all the details that they need. Like if it's a virtual, like how to get on, or even knowing if they're coming in person, like just having the directions and the parking information and knowing where to go and who to see. Tell them about your work environment. So just mentioning the dress expectation for the, for the interview. Just little things like that will leave a bigger impression with candidates than you think. So it's really a lot about the communication. Right now, when we're working with our clients, because it is a candidate market, one of the things that we tell, we try to make them promise is that when we send them candidates to look at to see if they want to bring them in to interview them, it's really key that they respond quickly to us, because candidates are moving really fast. And so our recruiters are having to work twice as hard. They're having to work hard to communicate with the client, and they're having to work hard to communicate with the candidates to keep the candidates engaged. So if you're doing your own hiring process and recruiting candidates, communication is key. Touching base with them like every, at least once a week or every so many days, if it's taking a while for you to get through everybody, but just keeping them engaged, because what happens is if they get crickets or radio silence, they're moving on. Also being
I'm sorry, Andrea, one of the things, brought something up in my mind. I used to work for AT&T, and we were recruiting technical talent for our leadership development program. One of the things that we did for the newbies was to assign them a buddy. And so for that first year, because it's just overwhelming, all of the different things that they have to get used to. I know Kelly was mentioning as far as relocation, but having that buddy to where maybe the manager's kind of, too busy with the day to day. That buddy who's more of their same age can kind of, tell them, about restaurants and, show them different forms online, or make sure that they, fill out their healthcare information or whatever. Just somebody to kind of break that onboarding down, and then make them feel like, okay, I'm new to Dallas, but yet I've got at least somebody I can, talk to or hang out with.
Yeah, that is an excellent idea. I like that. I'm actually going to probably steal that and use that example, because I love that, having a buddy. And especially like for companies, I know one of the leaders of diversity, equity, and inclusion for Brinker, like she talked about like, when they went remote, and they still had to hire, they were constantly hiring people and things like that. And with Brinker, they have a certain culture, and it's a culture that people are drawn to, and they go to a lot of people go to work for Brinker because of their culture. So for them, they found that people were having difficulty when they started, because they joined the company because they were like, oh, it has this culture and this, and when they joined, because of the COVID situation, it wasn't what they knew Brinker to be, or what they thought they would be, or whatever. So then HR really started to work really hard on their different onboarding processes and things like that, to make the transition easier, until they actually were able to like go back in person. And it would help the employees to kind of transition in a little bit better. And then when they were able to actually go back in person, and she talked about how they had their first back in person kind of like big employee event, and people were like, this is why I started. This is why I joined Brinker. This is the culture. This is what I know, right? So it is, that whole bringing new people in, especially when they do join your company because of your culture or because of the work that you do or things like that. You have to, it is a challenge, but you have to step up and find ways to onboard them in and connect them. Onboarding is so, so important. I know many companies, just because everything is moving so fast, they hire someone, they bring them on, and then they're like, just get started, or whatever. But you have to remember that person really needs, they may have the skills and the talent to do what you need them to do. But if you want to be successful in having them to really come on board, fit in, and really feel like they're part of the company, don't forget the onboarding process and how, and making that a really great experience for them. And another thing is to make sure that you're standardizing the process so that it is the same for every candidate and for everyone coming in. And then again, that whole communication, I cannot stress that enough, is so, so important. Even in the recruiting space, I mean, when we're working with on the client side and with the candidates, I mean, it's getting tougher. Our director of recruitment, Nicole Stasic, I've been trying to kind of like cheer her up the last couple of weeks, because she's working our 4 or 5 different positions right now. And she is like a superstar, and she has been losing candidates. She had one week where she lost like 3 or 4 candidates, not all on the same position, but on the various positions that she's working on. And it really, for her, it is a little it's a little discerning, because the candidates that she finds, she knows that they're really good candidates. And our goal is to always be able to have our clients be able to choose the person that they want. So it's like really, it's really critical on our end to keep all of those candidates engaged so that our client can make the choice, right? And so it's frustrating, because again, people are moving on. People are moving on. They're interviewing with other people. Somebody might have been there. One company may have been their first choice, but if they're not hearing anything back, or if the process is getting drawn out too long, then they are moving on. One of the things that we get from our clients up front, so that we can level set with the candidates, is what is the interview process? What does it look like for your company? So is it going to be 2 interviews? Is it 3? We have worked with some clients, like one particular client, it is, they have 7 steps to their interview process, right? And that's a lot. We need to be able to level set the expectation with the candidates upfront about that, right? So that they don't drop out in the process, or we don't waste time with people who are going to drop out in the process. I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. Do you guys, I'll just open it back up and we can talk about anything else and answer any other questions.
I love that, buddies. Oh, go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to say thank you. This has been really helpful. I took a ton of notes. Really appreciate your time in the presentation today. So thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I really liked the buddy system, Sherry and Andrew, you know, especially Gordon Highlander growing so much. You know, we hired like 35 employees, I think, during 2020. And it was very hard for me as a connection person. I love our people and I'm a hugger. And I was like, how are these people going to come on without me hugging them? Like, that's just a problem, you know? And so I really had to use, as soon as they would announce we hired someone, I would get straight on LinkedIn, and hopefully if they had a LinkedIn account, I could just go, hey, welcome to the family, you know, we're, you know, and so, but what I found when we finally did get to come back together and we had so many new faces, and it was just overwhelming to see, and are emotional to see all these new people, you know, that we almost doubled, right? But it was just like one big family. We still, a lot of people were like me that was working remotely, but the ones that weren't, they wrapped their arms around them because you felt that there, right? So that just told me that our guys in the field and our, you know, our senior management are really, they were doing their job of making sure that they had their arms wrapped around them, onboarding them, you know, and that's a real concern when you keep growing. You know, you go, we got to maintain this culture. We're out putting out everything that we do, and you want to make sure that that's the story that you're telling, but is it the same story everyone else is seeing or perceiving with the new people, right? You know, that's a big deal. Like you know, hey, y'all say this, but hey, this isn't what it is. But, you know, so it's really important that, you know, and we have a great VP of culture and talent, Mandy, and she's incredible. She started the company with Greg, and she keeps her hand on everyone and really makes sure that that's the onboarding process, the culture training, all of that is, and it's just really important. But as we move into new markets, it's a little, how are we going to keep it there? How are we going to keep that culture when we're recruiting new subcontractors and partnerships? And, you know, how do you keep that there? And I think it really starts at the heart of at the top, and it filters. Like you've got to, that has to be in place. So thank you, Andrea. I mean, this was really great, and just more confirmation of how we need to look at talent.
I love what you've said about your company. I mean, it gets me excited. Like, I love companies that really like bring their all into what they're doing, and not only for them, but for their employees as well, you know. And so it's overwhelming, like you said, when you come back and then you see, oh my gosh, all this growth and all these new people. And, you know, it's really about, and that's why I loved your example, Sherry, of the buddy example, so that no one gets left behind. Because sometimes you will hire employees that are a little bit more introverted or a little bit more quiet. So making sure that they feel included and aren't left behind just because, you know, they get kind of lost in the more extroverted people, expressive people.
Well, thank you, Andrea. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Thank you all for taking time today to attend. I wanted to mention some upcoming events. So on Friday, November 12th, we have a book look that was rescheduled. It didn't see that coming, putting life Back Together When Your World Falls Apart hosted by Tanya Watson from FTI Bellman. And then November 16th, we have Gordon Highlander hosting a breakfast tour. And that's offered to members only, and it has limited space. So sign up for that over at the Caddo office Reimagined. And then November 17th, we have our happy hour at El Rincon in Addison, sponsored by ONC National. And then December 2nd, we have a bath bombs event to make some bath bombs for the holiday season. So thank you all again. Hope to see you soon and have a great rest of your day.
Sounds really fun.
Bye,
I gotta get signed up for some events.
Yeah.
So Sherry and Andrea, I just linked in with you, so I'm pending. But I did